Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something I think we all feel, that modern, just persistent feeling of being overwhelmed.
Absolutely. It's almost the background noise of life these days, isn't it?
It really is. And we've looked at some fantastic sources focusing on what they call stress reset strategies. And the key thing here is they're simple.
Yeah, often really quick, like 5 minutes or less, evidence-based methods, not these huge, life-changing things you never get around to.
Exactly, because, the aim today is really to give you some tools to, interrupt that cycle before it spirals.
Right. Because stress itself, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. But the real disaster often comes from how we react, not the stressor itself.
Yeah, that's the core idea we found in the clinical research. There's this simple formula that explains where we often go wrong. The stressor itself might be small, manageable even, but then we do this calculation in our heads. Stress plus overthinking it,
Yep, the rumination.
plus avoiding dealing with it. And that equals, well, multiplied stress. Way bigger than the original thing.
Yeah. That multiplied stress, that's what the clinicians see, leading to what they call the bad move.
The bad move.
Yeah, it's that instinctive thing you do when you're overwhelmed, but it's totally counterproductive. It just, digs the emotional hole deeper.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
The sources had some really visceral examples of this, like the story of Adam, the author's husband.
Ah, the spilled milk incident?
He's already late, spills a whole carton of milk. Minor annoyance, right?
Should be.
But he's already stressed. So he rushes to clean it, cuts his hand. Then he's driving frantically to the pharmacy, just stewing over his terrible morning.
Just ruminating, not paying attention.
Exactly. And boom, gets into a fender bender, a serious one. All tracing back to spilled milk, but layered with panic and, well, not pausing.
He totally missed that chance to just stop, breathe, and reset after the milk, let the initial annoyance pass.
And the author herself, her story about stress was just as striking. After her second kid, totally overwhelmed, exhausted, she started biting her nails.
Right, but not just biting them.
No, like severely, relentlessly. It led to a really bad infection, landed her in the emergency room.
Wow.
And you think, if she just had a quick reset strategy instead of that kind of avoidance behavior,
Yeah.
maybe none of that physical suffering would have happened. That moment of avoidance, that's where we lose the plot.
That feeling of losing control. Yeah. And that's exactly why we need more than just tools. We need a kind of philosophy behind them.
A philosophy.
Yeah. The sources really root the hope here in Viktor Frankl's famous words. You probably know them.
Remind me.
In the space between stimulus and reaction, there is a space. In that space, we have the capacity to choose our response.
And our response contains our growth and freedom.
Ah, yes.
That's it. That's the core hope.
And that's the aha moment, right? These strategies, they don't stop the milk from spilling. They make that space bigger. The space between the spill and the fender bender.
Exactly. They give you room to choose. And what's great is that these methods aren't just pulled out of thin air. They're a synthesis of really solid evidence-based therapies.
Like what? Well, insights from DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, that's huge for emotional regulation.
Okay.
And ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is all about values and, well, acceptance.
Right.
And good old CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, for tackling those unhelpful thought patterns. These are tools that are tested, they work, and they're distilled down so you can use them quickly.
Okay, let's dive into those tools then. Starting with one that feels honestly pretty counterintuitive, the mindset shift.
Yeah, this one tricks people up sometimes.
Because we're always told stress bad, threat, avoid at all costs. But this first tool says, maybe we should try to befriend it.
Precisely. Stress only really becomes that paralyzing threat when we believe we can't cope with it. The goal isn't to eliminate it, but to see it as fuel, as energy.
Fuel? How?
Well, there's this really cool study by Allison Wood-Brooks. It gives us a super practical way to do this, to reappraise the feeling.
Okay, so picture this. Big meeting coming up, heart's pounding. The instinct is always calm down, down. Just got to white knuckle it.
Right. And trying to force yourself to be calm when your body is basically yelling danger. It just creates this internal conflict, more pressure.
Totally.
So Brooks's research found something amazing. When anxious participants were simply told to change their self-talk from calm down to I am excited, they actually performed better.
Wait, hang on. I am excited. Isn't that just like lying to yourself?
Yeah.
How does that actually work? Is it just suppression?
Great question. It's not suppression, it's reappraisal.
Yeah.
See, the body's physical state for fear and excitement, it's surprisingly similar.
Really?
Yeah, heart rate's up, adrenaline's flowing. It's just arousal, it's energy. When you say, I am excited, you're basically relabeling that physical energy. You're telling your brain, this isn't a threat, this is readiness.
Huh. So you're changing the meaning of the feeling.
Exactly.
Wow.
The study even mentioned a karaoke experiment. People who consciously labeled their pre-performance jitters as excitement actually sang more accurately and confidently.
Yeah. Karaoke proof. Okay, I'm starting to see it. It reframes the physical sensation almost instantly. I love the phrase they used. Converting knots into bows.
That's the one. Kahuo. Turning those tight knots of anxiety into something productive, even elegant.
And it's not just psychological fluff, right? There's actual data.
Oh, yeah. Jeremy Jamison's research provides really tangible evidence. They worked with students prepping for the GRE, high-stakes test.
Yeah, it's stressful.
Super stressful. They taught one group to view their symptoms, the racing heart, the dry mouth, as helpful, as signs their body was gearing up, fueling their performance. And that group scored significantly higher on the math sections just by changing the interpretation of their physical stress response.
Wow. So for you listening, that jolt of adrenaline you feel before a deadline or maybe a tough conversation, it doesn't have to mean, oh no, I'm going to fail.
Right. It can mean, okay, body's ready, let's go. It's a huge shift towards feeling like you can cope, towards self-efficacy.
Okay, so step one is changing how we think about stress, reframing the physical signs. What's next? Because sometimes the emotions still break through, right?
Absolutely. That leads us straight into emotional regulation. Stress definitely makes our feelings more volatile, more intense.
So how do we regulate them?
Well, the sources say it starts with just noticing and naming the emotion without judging it. And a key part of that is understanding the difference between a primary and a secondary emotion.
Primary versus secondary. Okay, explain that.
So a primary emotion is your initial gut reaction to something. It's often direct, informative. A secondary emotion is your reaction to your primary emotion. It's often a judgment.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's use the client example from the source, Melanie. She's juggling work, a toddler, she's exhausted. She feels intense anger that's primary at her husband for not pulling his weight with childcare.
Right, that anger is a signal something's not right, needs aren't being met. Pretty useful, actually.
Exactly, it's a useful signal. But then Melanie feels secondary shame about her anger. She thinks, I shouldn't be angry at him, good wives aren't angry.
The judgment.
That's the secondary emotion. And that shame makes her suppress the anger, which means the original problem doesn't get addressed, and she feels worse, more tension, more resentment. The shame is actually far more destructive than the initial anger was.
Okay, so the goal isn't necessarily to stop feeling angry, but to stop the shame from taking over and making things worse.
Precisely. Prevent that secondary emotion from driving suppression or some other unhelpful behavior.
How do you do that in a moment?
That's where a simple tracking tool called the ARC model comes in handy.
ARC.
ARC, antecedent response consequences. It just helps you map out what's happening.
Okay, break it down using Melanie.
Sure. The antecedent A is the trigger. Her husband's watching TV while she's exhausted. The response is complex. The thought, this isn't fair. The primary feeling, anger, maybe some physical tension, and crucially, the behavior she chose. Suppressing the anger, withdrawing. And the consequences, C. Feeling shame, guilt, maybe her blood pressure rises, the underlying issue persists, the relationship suffers.
So mapping it out like that shows you exactly where things went off track.
Yes. It highlights the link between the feeling, the thought, and the action you took and what resulted from it. It pinpoints the moment you could choose a different response.
And the tool for choosing that different response.
It's
opposite action, right? I've heard that from DBT.
That's the one, foundational and emotional regulation therapies. The idea is simple but powerful. If your emotion is pushing you towards a behavior that's ultimately destructive or unhelpful.
Like if you're feeling really sad or hopeless, and the urge is just to crawl into bed and isolate.
Then you deliberately do the opposite of that urge. So the opposite of isolating when sad is often behavioral activation. Meaning you get up, you reach out to a friend, you go for a walk, you engage in an activity you value, even if you don't feel like it.
Acting opposite to the impulse.
Exactly. And the sources are clear. The action itself can start to change the emotion. You act your way into feeling differently. It breaks the pattern and prevents those negative consequences we saw in the ARC model. It's about choosing effectiveness over just following the feeling of the moment.
Okay, effectiveness over ease. I like that. So mindset shift, Emotional regulation.
Yeah.
What's the third big hurdle these sources tackle?
The big one, escaping the rumination trap.
Ruminating, like cows chewing cud.
Kind of. Psychologically, it means that repetitive, circular worrying, when you just play the same problem or mistake over and over in your head.
Oh yeah, it feels like you're trying to solve it, but you never actually get anywhere.
Exactly. It feels productive, but it's just draining your mental energy. It doesn't solve anything. It just makes anxiety and depression worse by turning acute stress into chronic stress.
We all do it though. So how do we stop? How do we break that loop?
The sources give two really practical self-distancing techniques you can use pretty much instantly.
Okay, lay 'em on me.
First one is super simple, just the linguistic shift. Instead of asking, why did this happen? Why me?
Which keeps you stuck in the past, right? Feeling like a victim.
Totally stuck. Analysis paralysis. Instead, you force yourself to ask, how? How can I move forward? How can I handle this?
So shifting from why to how.
Yep. Why looks backward into blame and helplessness. How looks forward into action and control, focusing only on what you can influence right now.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second strategy?
This one's fascinating. It involves using self-distancing pronouns. So if you're caught in that negative self-talk spiral,
Like, I'm such an idiot, I completely bombed that presentation.
instead of using I, you switch to you.
Mm.
So you'd say to yourself, okay, you made a mistake in that presentation. So what are the next 3 steps you can take to fix it or learn from it?
Using you instead of I. Why does that little word change make such a difference?
Because it instantly creates psychological distance. It's like you're stepping outside yourself and looking at the situation more objectively, almost like you're advising a friend.
Ah, taking an observer perspective.
Exactly. Psychologists sometimes call it psychological time travel, too. Imagine looking back on this stressor years from now, or think about what advice you'd give someone else in your shoes. That distance dials down the emotional intensity dramatically. You shift from being the victim in the drama to being the coach figuring out the next play.
Victim to coach.
Mm.
I like that image. And that idea of shifting perspective, it feels like it leads naturally into the concept of acceptance, right?
It really does, but acceptance is another one of those terms that gets misunderstood a lot.
Yeah, people hear acceptance and think it means resignation. Like just giving up, oh, well, guess this is my terrible life now.
Right. But that's not what the sources mean by acceptance, especially in therapies like ACT.
So what is it then?
Acceptance isn't passive resignation. It's an active process of acknowledging reality as it is in this moment. The milk is spilled, the deadline was missed, the feeling is here.
Okay, so you acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then, because you're not wasting energy fighting reality, this shouldn't have happened, you free up that mental and physical energy to focus on what you can do next, in line with your values. You accept the what is so you can effectively deal with what now.
So acceptance allows you to pivot towards action based on what matters to you.
Exactly. Which brings us to the importance of knowing what does matter to you, your values. This is the ultimate antidote to feeling paralyzed by stress or problems.
How do you connect with those values when you're feeling overwhelmed?
The sources mention a powerful therapeutic tool called the miracle question.
The miracle question. Sounds dramatic.
It's simple but profound. You ask yourself, if you woke up tomorrow morning and by some miracle, all the problems that were bothering you had disappeared, what would your life look like? What would be different? What would you be doing?
Okay, I see where that goes.
Yeah. It instantly shifts your focus away from the current pain and illuminates what you truly care about. Deep down, maybe it's family connection, personal growth, contributing to something bigger, mastering a skill.
It reminds you of the bigger picture, like your life pie, as they sometimes call it.
Exactly. It shows you that this one problem, even if it feels huge right now, doesn't consume your entire life pie. It restores perspective and motivation by reconnecting you to your why.
Okay, this focus on building internal skills, mindset shifts, regulation, acceptance, values, it really highlights a potential danger, doesn't it? The temptation of external quick fixes.
Oh, absolutely. And the sources we looked at were quite direct about the concerns, especially regarding the overuse of certain pharmacological solutions.
What about specifically?
Primarily benzodiazepines drugs like Klonopin, Xanax, Ativan, which are often prescribed for anxiety, and also the increasing reliance on marijuana for stress management.
Now, this isn't about judging anyone's choices, right? It's about understanding the potential downsides.
Exactly. It's about understanding the physiological trap these substances can create, especially when used long-term for chronic stress or anxiety. Why might these seemingly helpful quick fixes actually undermine our ability to build real coping skills?
Okay, so explain that mechanism. Like, With Xanax, how does it work and what's the trap?
Sure. So benzodiazepines work by boosting GABA in your brain. GABA is your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. Think of it like the natural brake system.
Okay, slows things down.
Right. These drugs basically slam on that GABA brake, which is why they provide such immediate relief from anxiety. You feel calm quickly,
Sounds good so far.
but the brain is incredibly adaptive. If you keep artificially slamming on the brakes with an external drug, your brain says, okay, I don't need to produce as much of my own GABA or make my receptors as sensitive because this external stuff is doing the job.
It downregulates its own system.
Precisely, which leads to tolerance. You need more of the drug to get the same effect. And then comes the really dangerous part, withdrawal.
When you try to stop.
Exactly. Your natural GABA system is now suppressed, and you've removed the external brake enhancer. The result is often a massive rebound of anxiety, sometimes far worse than what you started with. It can lock people into dependence because stopping feels unbearable.
And crucially, you haven't learned any other way to manage the anxiety.
That's the core issue. You've inhibited your body's natural stress response system, so you never get to practice managing that arousal, learning those coping skills like reappraisal or opposite action. Your brain doesn't learn it can handle it on its own.
And the sources raise similar flags about using marijuana for chronic anxiety.
Yeah, while many users report short-term relief, the research increasingly points towards long-term or heavy use being associated with potentially worsening underlying anxiety and depressive symptoms over time. Again, it can become a crutch that prevents the development of more robust internal coping mechanisms.
So the overall message seems to be caution. Prioritize building self-reliance and emotional flexibility rather than becoming dependent on something that might mask the problem but ultimately weaken your own ability to cope.
Exactly. It's about choosing self-efficacy in the long run.
Okay, so let's try and bring it all home for you listening.
Yep.
This whole deep dive, it's really been about building that internal resilience, hasn't it? Through active choices, not by trying to dodge stress, because we can't.
We really can't. And we've kind of identified 3 core pillars for resetting stress effectively.
Okay.
First, that mindset shift. Seeing stress as fuel, not just a threat. Using that "I'm excited" reframe.
Okay, pillar 1, mindset.
Second, emotional awareness and regulation. Using tools like the ARC model to understand your patterns and opposite action to respond effectively, not just impulsively.
Right, pillar 2, emotional awareness.
And third, action over rumination. Deliberately shifting from asking, why did this happen, to asking, how can I move forward? Getting unstuck.
Pillar 3, action. Mindset awareness, action.
It really all boils down to cultivating what the sources call willingness.
Willingness versus, what was the other term? Willfulness.
Yeah, willingness is having that open mind to try something different, to change, even when it's uncomfortable. Willfulness is that stubborn sticking to the old ways, the destructive habits, maybe because they feel familiar or easier in the short term, even though they keep us trapped.
So choosing openness over stubbornness, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And that choice, that willingness to engage even when things are hard, that's where real hope comes from. Hope isn't just a passive feeling you wait around for.
What is it then?
It's the active belief, the conviction that you can still take steps, however small, toward a lay that matters to you, even when everything feels chaotic or painful. And self-regulation, these skills we've talked about, they are the absolute foundation of that kind of hope.
That's a powerful way to frame it. So maybe a final challenge for everyone listening today.
Let's do it.
Okay. Think about one area in your life right now where you might be acting out of that willfulness or avoidance. Maybe it's small, like that pile of laundry you keep ignoring, or maybe it's bigger, like a difficult conversation you need to have.
Find that one thing.
And then just identify one opposite action, maybe a tiny one that you can take in the next hour. Just one small step that goes against the grain of avoidance or despair.
Start small. Prove to yourself that you can make a different choice.
Reset your path, one small opposite action at a time.